This ties in with the Second Amendment. But, so there's an exchange that goes on in our government. The exchange between these natural rights and the ability of you to exercise them without check in return to the government to set up a system so that you can conduct your business otherwise and have them take care of that piece. And like I said, the main piece is the idea of settling your own disputes, and we have this elaborate system of police and courts and lawyers and all sorts of things, and maybe a lot of control now, but that was something traded off. The other thing is that the government takes care of things like roads, and it takes care of the mail, such as it is now, and all the things that they felt was important then. These were things that the government is saying, all right, you're creating this government amongst us, right? Remember the terms governments are instituted among men, not instituted on men. It's amongst. These words are very important to the framers. They're very well-educated, well-read, and thoughtful men. And so when they use those terms, they have a lot of meaning. So your government is not above you. It is among you. It is part of you. So when people want to talk about the Second Amendment and say, oh, well, some of you guys will rebel against the government. You can't. You are the government. And we don't like it very well right now, but we've kind of gotten the government we deserve, right? Yeah. We let it happen. But the government still is you. When the government becomes something other than you, then it's a really big problem. And so far, even though it seems like it's far away from us, it is still something we can do something about. For the most part, I think governments remain amongst the people as long as they can change them without insurrection. And we can certainly do that now. And the Second Amendment really isn't about insurrection. When you get talked to by people in the media or people on the left, they will always try and corner you now, say, oh, so you're talking about is rebellion, you're militia. And I don't mean like a low-rated militia. You want to go live on a compound in Idaho and rebel against the government, and that's what you're really talking about. You're almost as bad as Bernadine Dorn and Bill Ayers, aren't you? Without the dynamite and the lack of skill in setting it off, because they weren't able to blow enough stuff up, because frankly they weren't smart enough about how to use it. So thank the Lord. But that's the corner they want to push you into. That's not what this is about. There's a difference between desiring to utilize force against your government and saying, I just want to have a situation where I'm not the only one that doesn't have the ability to defend myself. I don't want to rely on the government for all of my defense. I don't think I should trust the government to do that. I don't think the framers thought we should. I don't think anybody thinks we should. Well, a few people think we should. Even in Britain, and this is where things came off in the wheels in Britain, was for the longest time in Britain, a free people were defined as somebody who, one of the things they got to do was own land, but also possess arms. Things that have been happening in Great Britain for a long time that we got to pay a lot of attention to. Rights in Great Britain are disappearing at an enormous rate. I mean, people go to jail for things they say on Twitter. Oh, there's a whole group of hate crimes, and it's a very dangerous thing, because they have no First Amendment in Britain. They have a system that encourages free speech. They have the Official Secrets Act. They now have laws on the books about essentially hate speech, and people can be prosecuted for going off on someone. And this has happened in the last year and a half, for making some stupid and ridiculous tirade that has a racist tirade on a bus or a train, and it's having somebody film it. That's a crime. Okay? It's a crime to have some idiotic Twitter feed out there about somebody. That country is changing so fast. And part of it is because they have no real backstops. The backstops have always been custom and tradition. They don't have truly one document constitution like we do, where someone has defined their natural rights. And as a result of that, they're slipping away. There's nothing for them to stand on. We still stand on this document. The left hates it. But we can still stand on the document because it's clear and it's concise. And for the most part, it's still respected by the population. But with the Second Amendment, we have to remember that they've constantly tried to shift the meaning of everything. corral you and to make you think that if you talk about that, the Second Amendment was to protect you against, oppressive government or something, that you're some kind of crazy militia person. That's not it at all. And Ben Shapiro, who's an editor for Breitbart.com, had a great exchange with Piers Anthony. Some of you probably saw it, where he's essentially saying, essentially what we did say is, look, I don't know what's going to happen in 20 years. Maybe, I'm not saying this government's going to do anything, but we don't know what's going to happen in 20 years or 40 years. People in 1929 in Germany didn't think what was going to happen in 1939 in Germany. And he brought up the fact that he's Jewish, and he said, some of my ancestors are dust now, and they might have been able to defend themselves. Something might have been different. And why not allow people that right? What we're being asked to do with the Second Amendment now is to exchange a valuable right, a preserved natural right, to exchange that for something of very dubious value. We have no real evidence that limiting the availability of firearms or weapons, for the most part, to the population has anything to do with controlling crime. We have more weapons available in society now than we did 20 years ago, and crime rate's down. In Great Britain, they did away with almost all handguns in 1998. By 2000, the gun crime rate had gone up 40%. Australia's another good example. And if you read some honest commentators out of Britain, well, they'll tell you there's two armed camps now: the police and the criminals. And the citizens are just stuck in the middle. Also, in Britain, there's a third piece to this, is that they don't really have any of the protections we have. All it is you have to use reasonable, appropriate force if you catch an intruder in your house. British citizens are sued all the time by burglars because if they overuse force against a burglar. We're as much as we complain, we're still on much better ground than the British have become. And so right now, British citizens are caught in the crossfire. There's a lot of these neighborhoods people live in, they just don't go out at night. It just doesn't happen. They don't have any way to defend themselves. And, we have the old saying, when you need police in seconds, they're minutes away. That's just the way it is. And so we want to retain the natural right that our framers realized we needed to have. And so when we look at this and we're trying to defend this right, we need to say, well, what am I exchanging this for? The Constitution is about exchanging things. It's exchanging my right to do these things we talked about in return for something that makes life easier or better at some point, where I have more time to pursue my business interests and not have to beat my neighbor up because he keeps, his stereo blaring all night. I can call the cops. So what am I exchanging? Well, there's no evidence at all that any of these gun bills will work to reduce crime. So you're taking something great value and being asked to trade it for dubious value. You're trading a diamond for a trinket. There's just nothing to support it. Why would you enter into that exchange? I think that's the first thing you want to ask. Surely the right to self-defense, the right to protect yourself, your environment, and is an important right, even if it weren't in the Constitution. So why would you want to trade that for something that even the supporters lots of times don't think it's going to work? It is an impulsive desire, on the one hand, to try and award blame for a failed society and a violent, sociopathic groups that we've created by our societal programs, and try and say it's because of firearms. The sewer pipe that they've turned loose in society is now reaping the benefits with the occasional sociopath, and nobody wants to face that. They want to say, well, if it weren't for the guns. Well, if he didn't have legs, he wouldn't get down there either. How about that? It's a ridiculous assumption. And so what we have to make the point of all the time is we have a very valuable piece here. Show me some proof why I should trade that, because we're not even close. Even statistics skewed in favor of some kinds of gun control aren't even coming close to being effective for what they're trying to stop. None of what's happening in the legislature right now would have any effect on the theater shooting. None. And you're not even getting good reporting on what happened. Remember when that came out? First he had body armor on, remember that? It was a tactical vest. That just means it's got a lot of pockets on it. You know, if you're a fisherman, you probably got one like it. These guys who make a lot of money selling this tactical vest, and they got a lot of pockets to put stuff in. You know, should that be illegal? Only so many pockets? Think of how many rounds you could carry. You know, maybe only one pocket on something. You know, pocket protection. You should do that. Well, so that wasn't true. Then the next thing was, oh, this huge magazine on this AR-15 platform. He had a 100-round magazine. That sounds very scary. If you're familiar with those at all, most of the 100-round magazines don't work very well. They're cheap. There's probably one, maybe two big magazines that are very expensive that work better. Even if you have one that works well, they're hard to load. They don't lend themselves to use by an amateur. You've got to load them properly. You've got to make sure the shells aren't all waxed. There's a bunch of stuff, right? So what happens is he gets in the theater and his gun immediately jams. Like ARs have a tendency to do with bad magazines. So what does he use to do most of this crazy homicidal nonsense? A shotgun. You hear that? No. That's what happens. A shotgun, any kind of shotgun in a crowded room is probably your best benefit if you really want to do a lot of damage. It's a horrible weapon at close range. Now, we would Joe Biden likes it. You know, shoot right through the door. That's how you handle that. That's a good advice. But so you don't even get the right picture of this. So what they're doing now wouldn't make any difference anyway. None of that would make any difference. It's just a way to get another agenda. It's just nailing an agenda to every passing tragedy. And serious rights that are being taken away. And here's the last thing is, a lot of this isn't even really about guns. And I've said this before. I've said it on my radio show. It's about you. You know, if you own a gun, it's like a tell in poker, I like to say. You know, if you're a firearm owner, I know something about you now. You know, you own a gun, you probably are a Republican or a libertarian. You probably want small government. You're certainly a racist. You know, probably a homophobe. Probably, you know, something else, right? So you're essentially the enemy. And they tell all of this about you because you have a gun. Because you support the Second Amendment. So when they look at Second Amendment supporters, they don't just see firearms. They see a whole raft of things about you. And then, well, why should they protect your rights? You probably think those dead white slave-owning homophobes in 1789 knew what they were talking about. You know? And so that's why we get frustrated when we say, but the Constitution is so great, it's this and that. We forget the people we're talking to don't think that. They don't think it's that hot of a document. They don't think it's that great of an idea. It's like I tell people, you can't convert people who are atheists to believing the Bible by quoting the Bible to them.
Right.
Okay? It's not going to work. People try it all the time. Well, in Matthew, they said, they don't. The first premise is the same thing is you can't get people who think the Constitution is fundamentally a flawed document because they've projected a bunch of attitudes on the framers to go along the Constitution by quoting it to them. Well, the Constitution says this. In their hearts, they're thinking, okay, these guys know what they're talking about anyway. You know, this is just another hegemonic attempt to impose a racist and aristocratic